When a wife is deeply hurt, the most frightening thing is often not the tears, but the silence that has learned how to survive. In psychology, there is something very common yet often misunderstood. When a woman is deeply hurt in marriage, the first sign is not always anger, blame, or emotional outbursts. Very often the clearest sign is the one that makes almost no sound at all. It is the quiet withdrawal of her emotions. She is still there, still fulfilling her role, still speaking normally, but the warmest part of her has already begun to close itself off. Deep hurt in marriage rarely comes from a single event. More often, it is the result of many small disappointments accumulating over time. Too many times she spoke and was not truly heard. Too many times she was sad, and no one asked why. But too many times she felt vulnerable, but was not held with understanding. These things may seem minor from the outside, but they create a very persistent kind of pain. It is not dramatic, like a major argument, but it slowly erodes her sense of safety in love. To outsiders, the marriage may still look fine. There are no slammed doors, no explosive fights, no obvious drama. But psychologically, that silence is sometimes not peace at all. It is a survival mechanism. When a woman feels that her pain has been repeatedly minimized, her nervous system begins to learn how to retreat in order to protect itself. She is not silent because she no longer feels. She is silent because her feelings have been too often met without care. One of the first signs is a strange kind of calmness. No more intense reactions, no more pressing for clarity, and no more trying to argue her way toward being understood. She speaks more softly, more briefly, less often. On the surface, this may make her husband think that things have finally settled down, that she has become more mature, more in control, or less difficult. But from a psychological perspective, that calmness is not always healing. Sometimes it is emotional exhaustion. A person who no longer reacts strongly is not necessarily someone who no longer hurts. Very often it means they have been hurting for too long. When someone has explained themselves many times only to be misunderstood, when they have opened up repeatedly only to be told they are too sensitive, they eventually stop expressing so much. Not because the pain is gone, but because they are trying to preserve what remains of their dignity, or they begin to conserve emotional energy. They no longer want to enter conversations that always end with them feeling abandoned anyway. That is why a deeply hurt wife often stops explaining her emotions. In the past, she may have described everything in detail. What made her sad? Which words wounded her? Which moments made her feel lonely inside her own marriage? But later, all she says is, "I'm fine. It's nothing." Or, "It's okay." Many husbands hear those words and feel relieved, assuming that the storm has passed. But in many cases, this is not a sign of resolution. It is a sign of surrender. When a woman no longer tries to make herself understood, it often means that her belief in change has significantly weakened. She begins to feel that speaking her pain only causes more pain. And from that point on, she no longer seeks empathy. She begins carrying her emotions alone. This is a major psychological shift, from wanting connection to choosing self-protection. When the relationship no longer feels like a safe place, she starts hiding her heart. Another subtle sign is the way her smile changes. She may still smile, still respond, still behave with grace, still appear composed in family gatherings or in public, but that smile no longer creates connection. It becomes more polite than warm, more social than heartfelt. To a psychologist, this is a familiar expression. A person continues functioning normally on the surface, while their inner emotional world has already begun to contract. That is why some marriages look calm, but have been missing emotional intimacy for a long time. She still does everything expected of her. She still takes care of the children, handles the household, responds appropriately, keeps the peace, preserves her husband's dignity in front of others. But her private tenderness begins to fade. Her soft gaze appears less often. Her willingness to share becomes more limited. The desire to tell each other the small details of the day starts disappearing. The issue is not that she has become cold. It is that she no longer feels safe enough to stay soft. When hurt lasts too long, many women develop a form of defensive independence. They begin solving everything alone, making decisions alone, organizing alone, enduring alone, comforting themselves alone. From the outside, this may be praised as strength, competence, or resilience. But on a deeper level, it may not be natural strength at all. It may be the result of being disappointed too many times when they needed someone to lean on. She has not stopped needing support. She has simply stopped believing that support will come. This is one of the quietest wounds in marriage. A wife no longer feels she has the right to be vulnerable in front of her husband. At that point, her independence is no longer just a beautiful trait. It has become mixed with loneliness. She can do everything, but not because she always wanted to. She does it because waiting once led to disappointment. She handles things alone because asking once left her feeling neglected. She hides her needs because every time she revealed them, she risked being forgotten again. So a deeply hurt wife often begins asking for less, not because she needs less, but because she no longer has the emotional courage to keep placing her needs before someone who has repeatedly failed to meet them. This is where many people misunderstand what they are seeing. Some husbands think their wives have become easier, less demanding, or less stressful, so the relationship seems lighter. But in reality, what may be happening is this: her hope is shrinking. When a woman begins expecting less in order to hurt less, that is not healthy emotional maturity. It is the contraction of the heart. She no longer asks, "Can you tell I'm hurting?" because she fears an indifferent response. She no longer asks, "What is happening between us?" because she fears another round of avoidance. She no longer asks, "Do you still choose me emotionally?" because she fears a silence colder than rejection itself. From there, emotional distance begins to form. Not loudly, not through formal declarations, not even through a major fight. It appears in very small ways. She sits beside him, but no longer leans in. She goes to bed tired rather than longing for closeness. She stays busier, shares less, makes less eye contact. Many interpret this as attitude, coldness, or punishment, but in many cases it is simply self-protection. When closeness becomes emotionally risky, distance starts to feel safer. A person who has been hurt for too long gradually learns to limit how much of themselves they offer. Not because they have stopped loving, but because they cannot keep exposing the most vulnerable parts of themselves to uncertainty. They begin holding back their softness. They stop revealing the places that still ache, but they no longer want to hand over their whole heart to a space where they so often feel alone. The final stage, and perhaps the most concerning one, is not anger, but emotional fatigue. When a wife reaches this point, she no longer reacts the way she once did. What once made her cry now receives only silence. What once made her fight now gets only a nod. Not because the wound has healed, but because it has remained for so long that her emotional system has had to numb part of itself just to keep going. That numbness is very easy to mistake for stability. But in truth, it may be a sign that her endurance is nearing its limit. A heart that still argues is a heart that still hopes for change. A heart that says nothing is not always peaceful. It may already be withdrawing from what has exhausted it. And this is what many people realize too late. They think less conflict means a healthier relationship, when in reality the bond may already be quietly starving. The deepest truth is this: a woman who is deeply hurt in marriage is rarely asking for perfection. Most often, what she needs is not a husband who never makes mistakes, but a husband who can recognize her pain before it hardens into silence. She needs to feel seen. She needs to feel heard without having to endlessly justify her emotions. She needs to be held as a human being, not merely as a role. She needs to know that when she is vulnerable, the relationship is still safe enough that she does not have to retreat into herself. So when a wife becomes too calm, too undemanding, too self-sufficient, too polite, too easy, no one should celebrate too quickly. Sometimes that is not a sign that she has become happier. It may be a sign that she has learned how to live with pain without expecting anyone to reach for it anymore. And psychologically, that is the real danger. Not when she still cries, still gets angry, still speaks, but when she is still there, yet her heart no longer moves toward the relationship the way it once did. If her silence has grown heavier, it does not necessarily mean she has stopped loving. Very often, it simply means that love is trying to survive after being hurt for too long. And when love has to survive for too long instead of being nurtured, it doesn't die all at once. It withdraws inward, quietly, carefully, with discipline, and hurts in a way that is almost invisible from the outside,